Where's Start Broadcast? Don't see it.
Hey, welcome to Straight Up Real Talk with your boy Serge and Cerone. So, join us for an incredible show.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Straight Up Real Talk. I'm your boy Serge. We have an important show for you guys today. It is Black History Month, so what better way to start out with what we're going to be having a conversation about today. Cerone, man, what is going on?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. Today's been a good day for me. So far, I'm really excited about the show that we're gonna be doing today about policing in America. We have a special guest,
Yes, we do.
an associate professor, Dr. Melvin Rogers from Brown University. He will be joining us later on in the show, where
Yes.
we'll be talking about race and in America. However, let's start about what happened with the past couple weeks.
Yeah, but before we get into that, though, I do.
Yes.
We always got to start out with what we
Yes.
did last week. How was your week?
Yes.
How was your week?
My week was really interesting though. It was very cool, relaxed because this past weekend was my birthday. So
That's right. Round of
yes.
applause. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah, so I was in Greensboro for this weekend for a little bit, and it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable.
Okay. Yeah.
It was
So
enjoyable.
you were in Greensboro. Okay, so you were there. You were there actually with my family. All right, good. You picked a good
Okay.
location.
Yes, it was really good. How about yourself? What did you do?
I didn't do much. I'm still, as most of you can hear me, I still have this cold is still like bringing me down. So I'm
What's
apologizing now.
going
I
on?
sound a little crazy, congested, and so if I cough, I apologize. But I'm gonna get through this show because it's really important, and so I feel good about it. And so let's get started.
Yeah, so this past week, something really tragic happened where the death of Tyree Nichols was recorded, and we saw that five cops have been charged with his murder. The five cops here been charged with murder, and most importantly, we have Preston Hemphill and another person who were on the first scene, but they have been only been relieved of duty, but not actually charged. Now, what do you think about that? They weren't charged,
Yeah,
but they were just administratively relieved.
yeah. I'm gonna be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest. I try not to follow these stories. I'm gonna
Okay.
be honest. I try not to follow these stories. I did not watch that video.
Okay.
I never even watched the George Floyd video.
Mm.
It does something to me internally that I can't explain when I hear about it. It just does something to my spirit. And so I honestly couldn't watch it. And in regards to the ones who were put up, when you say what they were put on administrative leave, who was put on administrative leave?
So the two guys were put on Preston Hemphill and another
Yeah.
person, and that name
Yes.
has not been relieved.
Okay. From what I remember from reading the story, if I'm not mistaken, what happened took place in two locations.
Yes.
And it appears that the two who were put on administrative leave, they were at the first location
Correct.
where I believe the violence and the murder pretty much didn't take place. And so I
Correct.
believe that's why they justified putting them on the administrative leave for the time being. It could be upgraded charges later, but I
Yes.
believe that's why they were only put on administrative leave.
Mm-hmm.
versus the other 5 who were at the second location who actually participated.
Yeah, but in the
Yeah.
same breath, though, they tased him
Yes.
on the first scene.
Yes.
So, and he it wasn't combative. It wasn't anything of that sort. He was
Yes.
actually complying with their orders.
Yes. Which is the reason why I believe they were put on administrative leave for the time
Hmm.
being, because I believe that the department still feels like they didn't follow standard practices.
Mm.
And so I think when they dive deeper into the investigation, most likely additional charges will come. It's just that
Okay.
they weren't at the second location.
Uh-huh.
So they probably, and this is my opinion, they probably couldn't lump those 2 in with the other 5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probably. But most importantly, I want to point out here that these two officers, Emmett Martin and Desmond Mills, their lawyers said that they'll plead not guilty, I should say. So all the others will plead guilty,
Yeah.
but these two particular will not plead guilty. If you're in the comment section, just to go ahead and share with us what are your thoughts on the killing of Tyree, and we will bring you up on the podcast. But I do believe that all of them should plead guilty because we can see it, though. We can see it.
Oh, of course, right? No,
Yeah.
of course they should, right? I mean, you would, for us looking at it, it's like, what do you think, right? But I think they have no chance of getting off if they plead guilty, right? So I think if they
Mhm.
plead not guilty, that
Mhm.
gives their lawyers time to come up with whatever story, as they say, whatever storyline that they want to come up with. I don't mean it's not a joke, but
Mhm.
whatever storyline they want to come up with to try and get them off. Versus they plead guilty, there's nothing to talk about. There's no trying to get them off. And so I'm sure that's probably the reason why they're going to plead not guilty. They'd rather take their chance down the road, as they're still police officers at the end of the day. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, they still killed a black man. It's
Okay.
not a blonde haired a blonde haired boy or blonde haired girl, right? They killed a black man. So, you know,
So
you
does
never
it
know.
so does it matter if it was blue eye,
Oh, of course
blonde
it
hair?
matters. Of course it. Of course it matters. Of course it matters,
Hmm.
right? So, of course.
Because you do know that after 20 days after the murders happened, that's when they were charged,
Yes.
arrested,
Yes.
fired.
Yes, that is because they were forced to release the police officer's cam, and so they wanted to. So they did that beforehand too, because they knew that rioting and everything was going to take place. So
Hmm.
essentially, they tried to get in front of it. So that's the reason why they released it at the time they did.
That's really interesting
Yeah,
because when George Floyd situation happened and the body cam was released,
yeah,
he wasn't fired immediately.
yeah,
He was put on administrative leave,
yeah,
and he was in charge
yeah,
until weeks to months later.
yeah.
So why is that there a difference when there are black police officers who are in the wrong,
Hmm.
but when
Hmm.
white police officers are in the wrong, then
Hmm.
different rules apply?
Well, a friend of mine said, and because I thought the same thing until a friend of
Mhm.
mine said, actually, John Dobas dude, said that each police, each state, each town, whatever, usually have their own guidelines that they follow. It's not like
Mm,
one, and so because of that, we just don't know, because it's not like a uniform policy going across each thing where if you break the rules as a police officer, you don't follow, the guidelines, you're going to automatically be arrested and charged, right? And
okay,
so
okay.
maybe Memphis PD have that guideline in place. Like if you get caught, doing something you're not supposed to be doing, this is what's going to
Hmm.
happen. Boom, boom, boom. Versus George Floyd, that particular precinct or department, they probably didn't have that in place. They probably have it in place, administrative leave, investigation. Then we're going to see what's happened, type of thing. I do think it should be uniform across the board.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about for the two EMTs and one firefighter now? Now they have been fired. They're on the screen right here.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that they should have been fired?
Of course, they should be fired. The EMTs, from what I read,
Hmm.
they got to the scene and they stood around for 20 minutes before they did anything. So Tyree was, I believe, they said that he was up against the car, leaned over
Mm-hmm.
for 20 minutes, and they did absolutely nothing. And I believe she's the police chief. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that not the police chief, the fire chief.
The fire chief.
She fire chief. She sat in the fire truck the whole time. She never got out, right? And so that's why she's fired. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I do believe they should be fired. However, I do believe that a lot of that too could be intimidation, right? If you got these cops that just pretty much murdered this guy, and I'm an ENT worker, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like cops, and I'm just gonna say it, cops to me, they are scary. They are scary individuals. And so I would feel a little bit uneasy myself coming up to a scene like that and seeing that and wondering, okay, I know this is my job, but this is a bit uneasy for me. Like I don't know what to do.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
But I
Okay.
still think they should be fired. Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
because you took that job. You're supposed to like help people, and so I'm coming up to that scene and I'm going to do what I need to do, no matter what. Like, and so that's just that.
Hmm. Okay. It's really interesting that now the tables have turned a little bit,
Yeah,
where it's now the black officers now are the one who are doing the killings of
yeah,
unarmed black men. I do
yeah,
believe that there was something there, that some altercation of why they targeted him so close
hmm,
to his home, though.
yeah,
Like there's something just
yeah,
not sitting right at all. I
yeah.
think
I
there was
mean,
some hidden motive.
yeah, I mean, we don't know yet. I mean, there's all these theories going around. I'm not even going to talk about the theories that's going around on social
Yeah,
media because we don't know if they're true. So we're not going to
exactly.
start just talking about, theories. But
Hmm.
I mean, I do believe the same thing. Like, I just think it was just random that the five of you just decided to like beat this boy to death, like 80 feet from his house. Like, it just, I don't know. It's just, I don't buy it. I think there's more to it. I think we'll find out later on,
Okay.
once they finish their investigation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead right about now, and I'm going to introduce Mr.
Hold on.
What's
Before
that?
you do that,
Uh
before
huh.
you do that, I did want to ask you a quick question.
Oh, what's
Excuse me.
that?
Have you ever been affected by racism? Like, is there ever a time when you had the feeling like, like, am I being singled out? Like, I don't like this feeling. Like, has that ever happened to you?
Yes, I have. And it's interesting you ask, because when people see me, they see a black man,
Yeah.
a very tall. I'm six
Tall,
foot.
dark.
Now when I open my mouth, they're
Yeah.
like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that at all."
Yeah.
So I have been followed in stores.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I remember the first time when I got pulled over by a cop in Miami, I never forget it, because my first time in
Hmm.
Miami Gardens, I was coming home from work. I was working at Direct TV as a customer rep, and I got
Hmm.
pulled over for allegedly having my bright lights on.
Oh, wow.
And the way how he handled me and wanted to license and registration, and the way how he spoke, you would think that I'm some type of criminal, and said,
Yeah.
"Don't you know you're supposed to do this? Well, like how what type of man are you?" And I'm like,
Mm. Yeah.
if I wasn't of a different race, I would not have had been handled that way before.
Yeah.
So yes, I have. Because when they see me, they see one thing, but when I open my mouth, here comes the race, and here comes the discrimination,
Yeah.
and all the other negative attributes that comes to it, because I wasn't born in this country as an
Yeah.
immigrant.
Oh, well, yeah. That's another thing.
How about you? Have you ever been discriminated against?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of
Something you want
course.
to share?
Um, for instance, even now,
Mm-hmm.
there's a supermarket in town that I go to here, and as soon as you walk in the door, there is, and I should say I've been going to the supermarket for 6, 7 years now.
Okay.
So you would think they would know me already, but as soon as you walk in the supermarket, there is a self checkout. As soon as you walk in the supermarket, so you can see it and you walk
Mm-hmm.
past it, and so I quickly noticed that when I would walk in the door and I would just look over, because I would always look over to see, make sure it's not crowded. People would be checking out, non, you know, not black people, white people
Hmm.
would be checking out, and there would be no cashier over there at all. And I would walk around the store and I would still look over, and I'm looking over to make sure it's still not crowded, still no cashier. And I noticed after a couple of times that as I would begin to now walk over to check out and self checkout, all of a sudden a cashier would come running, literally running over to their register over there. And I noticed it a couple of times. Well, after like the third or fourth time, I was like, huh. I was like, so this is really a thing that they're really doing.
Mm.
And at first I started thinking, well, maybe it was a certain cashier person, because usually it was one who worked there. But then
Okay.
I noticed it didn't matter who worked over there. They would all do the same thing. And so then I was thinking to
Mm.
myself, so this isn't a personal thing. This is a store thing. Like I think they talk about that in the store.
Okay. Okay.
Like whenever you see a person of color over there, go over
Hmm.
there. And this is so funny too, because several times I've said to myself, this is the day I'm going to say something. This is the day that I'm going to say something, but I need to
Uh-huh.
be prepared never to come back in this store again.
Hmm.
And then it usually turns into, you know what? I'm not going to be that person. I'm not
Not
going to
gonna
be
be
that
that
person
guy.
to make a scene, and then they're going to say, oh, that's not true. And I'm like, yes, it is. So, you know what I'm saying? So I end up walking out and then
Hmm.
always feel mad about it because I should say something.
You got scared.
It's not that I get scared. It's just like, they're going to say, no, that's not happening. Right.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so now it's my word against theirs. Right. Unless I say, roll the tape back, roll it back, roll the
Yeah.
tape back. Right. And
And
so
then it's gonna be left up to interpretation.
exactly, right.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so, like I said, I always end up feeling a certain type of way about it. And again, I continuously still go back to that store. And people are going to say, well, why would you go back? Because it's not like it won't happen in another store. You know what I mean? And so that's just one thing that brown people have to deal with and worry about that other people don't have to worry about when they walk in the store.
Okay.
When I'm shopping and I don't take my bag to the car and I'm going
Mhm.
into another store, I will take my bag and tie it up before I walk in the store. Just to
Yes,
like
just so
listen.
that I can
Just to
know
like
that I'm
listen.
not going to put anything in the
Exactly.
bag.
Like I'm not interested in taking nothing from this store. I don't want you following me. So look,
Uh
like
huh.
I literally do that. Other people, they don't have to worry about that. They don't think about
Nope,
that type of stuff.
they
You know what
don't.
I mean? And so that's just some of the things that, we experience on a day-to-day basis that, other people would just never have to experience or even think about.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. That was very
yeah.
insightful. That was. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to bring on Mr. Associate Professor of Brown University, Dr. Melvin Rogers. Here we go. How you doing?
I'm doing
Welcome.
well. I'm doing well. Thank you both for having me.
Of course. Of
No
course.
problem, no problem, no problem. So go ahead and just introduce yourself and let us know, who you are and what exactly that you do.
Well, as you said in the introduction, I'm an associate professor of political science at Brown University. I'm also the associate director of the Center for Philosophy, Politics, and Economics here at the university. My primary area is political science. I primarily work in the area of African American political thought and philosophy. I work on things like race and white supremacy and
Hmm.
democracy.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you very much for
Yes.
agreeing to come on the show. So I want to just ask you, in this current political climate, uh, do you believe that, especially black men, when they are pulled over, they now have to be fearful of their lives when they get pulled over by cops?
Yeah. I don't know that that's unique to this climate.
Okay.
So I think um, it is part of the sort of education uh,
Okay.
growing up in Black communities, um, in which you are quickly habituated and quickly come to know that you're
Mm-hmm.
exposed and vulnerable during your encounters, if you have an encounter uh,
Mm-hmm.
with the police. And of course, this is intensified in the context of when we're talking about black men and their contact with the police. So black parents early on, mothers and fathers, educate their children sometimes quite explicitly, sometimes more subtly. You don't want to frighten your kids, but in subtle ways, to the sort of rules and etiquette of engagement with police. Although, as we know, those rules and the etiquette don't mean that you'll sort of make it out safely in an
That's
encounter.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really true. Because you can talk about, hey, what to do, what not to do when
Mhm.
you get pulled over, but there's no guarantee that you might actually be coming home alive from that situation.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I have a question for you. Because it's actually what's going on now. Um, why do you think there is currently an assault on critical race theory?
Mm.
And like, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, American politics and American culture is uh, um, um, quite perverse in how they function. So critical race theory is an academic area of inquiry that dates back 70s, 80s. And it was mostly interested in saying that, look, racism is not fundamentally or exclusively or even primarily about individual prejudice or individual bias, right? It is not about primarily transforming the beliefs of singular individuals. That the workings of racism display itself at the very heart of our sort of legal systems and policies, right? And so you see this in the early work of the late Derek Bell. You see this in the work of Kimberly Crenshaw, who teaches at UCLA, I believe. You see this in the work of Richard Delgado, who's in Seattle. That was the point of it. I mean, that was the point of this line of inquiry. And what we see in our contemporary climate is that line of inquiry being perverted. And so, for example, critics of critical race theory say things like the following: critical race theory is about dividing us. Right? Critical race theory is about sort of elevating black people over their white counterparts, not about achieving equity, right? And the idea of dividing us and not trying to achieve equity and emphasizing differences, all of this plays on Americans' desire to have a colorblind society. So if you have a tradition that now seemingly is emphasizing race and it's emphasizing it in a way that divides us, then that easily works to agitate um, um, uh, ordinary men and women who are not black and who are inclined to think that we ought not to pay attention to race. Um, and so that's the attack, right? It's an attack that engages in perversion of what that intellectual tradition is all about, and it's an attack that plays on the background beliefs of mostly white Americans.
Mhm.
But so to follow up to that, but wouldn't you say that that is fair on their part?
Oh, I mean, of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, um, Americans um, do not like to think that the troubles of their past cannot be overcome.
Mm,
Right?
okay.
We always like to think that the problems of the past, because of who we are as Americans, we can overcome them, right? I tend to think Black people are more attentive to the fact that we can't, but I think our public philosophy is that we can overcome.
Okay.
But a part of the argument in responding to racial inequality and responding to white supremacy is to say, no, we have to constantly think about our past and reckon with it. Then you find yourself in a conflict, right? Who wants to be constantly reminded, right, that their country did these bad things? And yet that reminder is quite essential to responding to the problem. And the refusal to attend to that past
Okay.
is part of what contributes to the persistence of the problem.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna stay in that same lane with the police officers. We've all been affected by the different killings of unarmed black men dating back from Rodney King all the way to the present. And I want to get your thought on this. Is race a major factor? Do you believe that race is a major factor when officers are allegedly being charged for what we see with our own eyes or what we hear with our own ears? Do you think that race plays a factor when this is done either in the judicial system or not? And just based on your knowledge and your area of expertise, have you seen that there's a correlation between one race versus the others?
Well, look, um, I think that many of us um, uh, look at these videos, and what is taking place seems quite transparent to us.
Mm-hmm.
And even after investigations come out and those details come out, they all seem to work to reaffirm the original thought that we had, which was that this particular black man or this particular black woman was murdered by a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when police officers are not charged or they're charged and then they get off, um, one can't help but wonder why. And then when the getting off is different across racial categories, it
Mm-hmm.
then it then raises it then raises questions about the workings of race in the decision making process, and it
Mm-hmm.
raises questions about the workings of race and how the audiences understand and interpret what they see in the video. So on the one hand, I think race is very much involved
Mm-hmm.
in a deep and intimate way that points to inequity, unfairness, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that there's a sort of separate issue uh, regarding the sort of militarization of policing itself and the way in which police are authorized to engage in um, arbitrary displays of power. And when I say arbitrary, we know what the word arbitrary means. It means we never know what's going to happen because it doesn't seem to be a settled rule guiding it. And so when you have race on the one hand at work and the militarization of police who can engage in arbitrary displays of power, it's not precisely clear how one transforms that kind of system. So my response obviously drifted off. It responded to that question, but then it drifted off into the question of, I think, into the issue of the sort of future of policing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems to me there's no way to sort of think about this question about the workings of race independent of thinking about what the future policing will or should be.
Yeah, because people nowadays no longer want to be cops anymore. Typically, when you ask like a male child, I want to be a firefighter, police, military, firefighter, like nowadays, and especially if you're a person of color, that word cop is like a bad word. It's like a trigger that they don't want to be a cop anymore because they've seen what cops do from a day-to-day basis based to people that looks like them, because then they're afraid that they could be next,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, pretty much on the same topic regarding defunding the police. And my question is, do you believe defunding the police would help or potentially make racism worse in America?
Yeah.
Because we always up and say, yes, let's defund the police, let's defund the police. But I always wonder in the back of my mind, is that now going to make matters worse? Not saying it shouldn't be done, but is it going to make it worse?
So, so this is the thing. We know that there are people in the United States that commit crimes.
Yeah.
And we know that there are people in the United States that commit heinous crimes against other human beings. And we all have a desire, by virtue of waking up in the morning, to be protected, and to enjoy a feeling of security as we move through our communities and about our day. So, so I think we can take it as settled that people want to be safe and they want to be protected. But it is absolutely unacceptable when the mechanism by which you use to protect people, policing, we're talking about the United States, means securing some and making others feel vulnerable. Right? Securing some who haven't done anything and making others who haven't done anything feel vulnerable. Policing structured in that way is not policing at all.
Okay.
Policing understood in that way is really about controlling Black bodies so that they don't um, um, so that they don't um, conjure fears by um, mainly white folks.
Pretty
Right?
much, plain and simple.
And this is the fundamental problem. And so when we talk about defunding the police, what we're really talking about is defunding an institution that is not committed to protecting and serving the community understood as a whole. That's what we're talking about, right? And if I don't, I think obviously that conservatives have weaponized this argument about defunding the police as a way to augment and enhance racist response toward Black people, but that still doesn't, I think, suspend the problem that we're dealing with. That American brand of policing is bound up with controlling Black bodies and making those people, Black people, feel vulnerable, right, in communities where they should feel safe and protected as a feature of belonging to the community.
Okay. And so,
and I apologize, my sort of academic reflections, it's just my style, but
That's good.
this issue is one that is, I'm actually not sure and clear exactly how we're going to deal with this issue, and what the fate of policing will be, given that most Americans seem unable to imagine beyond our current structure.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and I was saying, like, what is going to be the argument now, right? Because years ago we were told, well, if you just comply, right, it wouldn't happen to you. Well, if you don't run, it won't happen to you. If you don't commit a crime, you'll be okay, right? If you just pull over and keep your hands on the steering wheel, you will be fine. We know that's not true, right? They see now it's not true. So I always say, like, what is going to be the thing now that they're going to come up with to say, well, if you just do blank, 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 you would be okay. Because that's always been like a running argument for, let's just say the conservative side is, oh, just do this and just do that. Well, if you didn't run, well, we all know that doesn't work now. Like, it doesn't matter if you comply or not. If they want to end your life, they will, essentially, right? And so I just want to throw that out there. I'm just wondering what will be the thing, what will be the go-to line now when something happens next, and you complied, you put your hand on the wheel, you didn't, get out, you didn't reach for anything, right? And so that goes back to this question I was going to ask you. So do you think we will see any changes in our lifetime regarding the police?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important question, but it's also such a grand question, isn't it? Because in one sense, you might think that we've seen, you might say that we've seen a great deal of progress. This is not, 1863, as it were, right, prior to the Civil War. And if this is not the case, that Black people, that their status is equal to the status of Black people in the 19th century. So in one sense, there's been extraordinary progress. And all of that is to be applauded in some ways. But in another way, it seems to me that we haven't moved at all on some issues. And then in some ways, we haven't moved at all in terms of in terms of some of the sort of underlying cultural and political problems that we find ourselves grappling with. And what I mean this quite simply, that on the ladder of social value, the people you value, that belong to your community, on that ladder, Black people seem to sit on the lower rung, right? And whether we're talking about policing, whether we're talking about housing discrimination, whether we're talking about educational disparities, whether we're talking about health disparities, again and again, Black people seem to exist on the lower rung of America's hierarchy of value, right? And that seems to me that as much as there's been a great deal of progress, it seems that underlying element still animates our culture, our politics, and our legal system. And that is fundamentally about who we are, right, as a country.
So I want to so we want to stay in that same ballpark, but when it comes on to what we see in the media as it relates to police officers and how they will kill, for lack of a better word, I don't want to use the word kill, but they kill people of color unarmed. Do you think that now it's becoming the norm and children are now getting desensitized to that? Do you think there's a way how to not think that that is the norm now? Because oftentimes you see them like, okay, another unarmed Black man got killed. Okay, same stuff, different day. Like, how do you think that as a people that we can try to get past this, but also do something about it so that we're not desensitized and we can find a way how to move on?
Right. I mean, I think that I don't doubt that there is a process of habituation that has taken place as a result of this. That is to say, people are becoming habituated to seeing Black men or women killed by police. where more often than not nothing is done. And even as that is taking place, I have no doubt that it is. Black people and their allies must always resist. That the very meaning of one's dignity, what it means to live a life that is respected, demands that you not settle and that you not feel comfortable and that you not become habituated to what is constantly happening. So, on the one hand, what is constantly happening is our reality. And yet, on the other, because of just the kinds of creatures that we are as human beings, we must not settle for it, right? And so, as much as I sort of described the story and my response to you in responding to the questions, in which I sort of identify elements of the United States, of its culture in which Black people are devalued, and it seems to be central to sort of how this culture gets on with itself, we must still resist it. And there are spaces within the same culture of American life. We're in Black History Month.
Yeah, we are.
Right? Black folks are part of American culture. And it's not just Black people, but who have offered up arguments, ways of thinking, ways of organizing that are part of the culture that says this other darker part is just simply unacceptable.
I have a quick question for you, actually. Cerone and I were talking about this at the beginning of the show. Considering where you're at, lack of better words, where you're at right now in your career and just where you are in life, have you experienced any type of, racism that you can remember, or something that stood out?
Oh, of course. I mean, I wrote about it once, and this is when I was in high school and we lived in New York on Webster Avenue. And a friend of mine, he and I didn't go to the same high school. He was on the first floor. We were on the third or fourth. I forget now. But his mother just had a thing about having people in the house. So I would come downstairs and we would be in the hallway talking. But that hallway was also known when people entered to be a spot for where drugs were being sold. And so we were there talking. No one else was around, but two police officers came in. And they had got some call about this that demanded they do a search. And so they had us up against the wall. And I chuckled. And, the police officer, was quite aggressive with me. Because to my mind, we're high school students, and my friend's mother just has a thing with having people in the house. And so we were in the hallway. But it seemed to me, but I wondered at that moment that had I been a different kind of kid and looked differently, would the police officer who was white would he have dealt with me in a different kind of way, right? And all of this felt to me saturated. Not that he held some deep aversion or animus toward me, but because he knows or he has in his mind a perception of the kinds of people that live in this community, all of whom were Black and brown. And therefore, by virtue of the kinds of people that live in this community, they always must be held in suspicion or under suspicion, right? They always must be looked upon as suspect and therefore dealt with accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was interesting because people always portray things onto kids. So if you fit the box, they'll forever put you and keep you in that box. No matter if you are far from the box. It's okay, you're here, so therefore you're probably doing drugs and you're going to be mischief. So they want to do it that way. Yeah, but we're coming close to the end of the conversation with you. And I wanted to find out from you, now that we've seen the videos we've seen the charges, we've seen people lost their lives, kids, adults. In terms of the policing in America and in your area of expertise and everything, how do you believe as a society that we can move forward?
Hmm. Hmm.
How can we move past the hate? How can we move past and get to the point of healing where you are not triggered whenever you get pulled over by the cops and think, okay, this could be my last time alive?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or if you have a child that you have to have that conversation with them. Hey, make sure you have your driver's license handy, make sure you have your car registration handy. Don't try to have a whole conversation with a cop. If he asks you for it, just give it to him and that's it. Also make sure you have your front camera turned on, that you start live recording just in case that something goes. Like, how do we as a society move forward to get to that place where we feel safe when the cops come around, and moving forward in terms of policing as well too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to radically reimagine what it means to protect and serve communities. So, what role, for example, should the community play in selecting and overseeing those who are selected
Mm-hmm.
that will um, protect them? That we need to sort of think about policing not as a mechanism of controlling bodies, but as a mechanism that serves as a guardian for members of the community, all members of the community. So we need to radically reimagine the involvement of the community, and we need to radically reimagine what ideas we're drawing on when we're thinking about policing. Is it a good idea to think about police as our warriors? I don't know if that's a helpful or useful way to think about policing, right? Um, is it useful to think about policing as kind of paramilitary organization, right? Where the kinds of equipment that they have, the vehicles that they can have access to, are just slightly shy of tanks, right? I mean, does it make sense to sort of think about them in that way? I don't think so. I don't think any of this is conducive to the protection of the community. And I think finally, the one thing that we need to understand is that there is a culture to donning the uniform
Mm-hmm.
of a police officer, in which even those who are Black can be captured by and habituated by um, the workings of blue. And the workings of blue, right, the blue uniform, has a history. Its emergence, right, grows out of policing and controlling Black bodies, right? So these Black men that we, all skin folk, right? It's not Kim. um, there's no reason to think that just because they're Black, they too can't be captured by the workings of racism and white supremacy. And for those who think that, look, just because they're Black, a race can't be involved, this is one of the problems. We think that racism or white supremacy is only at work if you are phenotypically white. But that's
Hmm.
not true if you take seriously that white supremacy often swings or often leaves white bodies and infect the institutions, the norms, the policies, the beliefs of the institutions through which you move. And if you think about white supremacy in that way, Black people can be captured by it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Do you have another one for him, Serge?
No, because I know he has to go, and so so you can tell us though what you have coming up. Anything you want to talk about, discuss?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first I want to say I've been watching this podcast and I really appreciate what you two are doing.
Thank you.
This of course is a serious show. And I like that you two do serious shows. It's very important. But I also like that you two focus on the joy,
Yes.
and the joy of culture. And so don't lose that part. I have a book that's coming out in September. It's called The Dark and
Mhm,
Light of Faith.
mhm,
And it's a book about African American political thought.
mhm,
And it's a book that tries to sort of think about, you know, what are the ideas that African Americans had about this country,
mhm.
and what are the ideas that they thought ought to occupy the minds of their fellows, black and whites, in order to make this a freer and more just society.
Okay.
So it comes out in September from Princeton University Press.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Well,
And
I
everyone,
definitely will be getting it. Yeah.
yes,
No, go
of
ahead.
course. No, I was just gonna say, everyone, if you need to, if you want to follow him, if you want to research him, look at some of his work. His Twitter
Yes.
is up. His, I believe, his Instagram. Scroll by his website
Yes.
is also up, and so definitely go check him out. He's dope, and we hope to have him back someday soon.
Yes. Thank
Thank
you
Yeah,
very much
yeah.
for coming
Maybe
on.
maybe when
Really
we get a
appreciate
budget, we can give him a stipend.
Well, we're not going
it.
That's okay.
I appreciate you
You're
coming
welcome.
on.
I know. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming
All
by.
right. Thank you very much. Thank you all. That was
I
really
know that
great.
was
So
interesting. That was
that was
crazy.
really good.
I
That
know
was really good.
it
So
was different.
we have the black business that we have to shout out.
That's right. That's right. Actually, the black business that we're going to shout out is actually a friend of mine
Okay.
who owns a photography business.
Okay.
Yeah, and so my boy's name is Ernest. He owns a
Okay.
photography business. He takes really dope photos. He's professional business, license, and everything. And so definitely check him out. A
Okay.
little bit some of his work here. He takes professional shots,
Okay.
weddings, uh, baby showers.
Okay.
Like yeah,
Okay.
like he does it all. And so definitely check him out. There's his Instagram handle. You can go and check out his work. He has a whole page full of work. I don't want to. I have a condition where
Mhm,
I
mhm.
jack up people's names, and so Jair by Earn is what I'm going to say it is. He's going to kill
Okay.
me, but that's what I'm going to say it is. And there's his website there again, jairbyern.com. So definitely go check him out. He travels. And so, I believe it doesn't matter where you're at. He can come and and I don't want to say shoot you, but he can.
Yeah.
There's not a really good word to use, but he can come and hook you up. So definitely
Yeah.
go and check him out on Instagram,
Okay. Yes.
jairbyern.com. He's dope.
Yes, yes. And before we go, I want to thank you all for joining in. If you haven't subscribed to us, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube,
Yeah,
Facebook, and Instagram. We really
yeah,
appreciate everyone that joined us for this
yeah,
in-depth and insightful conversation. Oftentimes, these conversations are not the easiest to
yeah,
have, but they are important to have no matter how hard it is.
yeah. I
Because at
do
the end
want to
of the
say
day,
also, sorry,
yes.
go ahead. Go ahead,
No, no,
Tony.
because at the end of the day, we're important. Like our lives matter, and our
Yeah,
lives needs to matter.
yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is Black History Month, and so two of our shows this month is gonna be serious topic again, not regarding racism. It's another topic that I don't want to say at the moment, but it'll be coming up. There's actually a two-parter. Is a really serious show about something that's going on right now that no one is talking about, and we've both been doing a lot of research on it, and it's just pretty much horrifying when you hear some of the stats. And so again, there's going to be a two-part show. Look for that more in the middle of the month. We do want to give you guys another light-hearted, funny show this month, and so
Yes,
we're going to sneak one of those in for you guys. But look for a two real serious shows coming up this month that hopefully is going to open up some eyes about what's
definitely, it's
going
gonna be an
on
eye
that
opener.
people are not talking about.
Yes, most
Yeah.
definitely, most definitely, most definitely. Yeah,
And
well,
so this is
yes.
season 1, episode 3. You guys, we're doing seasons. I don't know if we ever told you this. So this is season 1, episode 3.
Mhm.
We haven't decided how long it's gonna go yet. So we'll keep you guys posted. But
Yes.
we do want to thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, for checking us out on Spotify
Mhm.
and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and YouTube. And so we appreciate you. We thank you. You know,
Yes. Thank you all for all your support, and we will see you next week,
next
Wednesday.
week. Peace
All right.
out.
Have a
Later,
good night.
everybody. All right.